Hazel has 26 years of employee benefits and remuneration experience. Hazel joined the MIH Group in 1995, where she was responsible for establishing remuneration and benefit policies and all related resource activities in various countries in Africa, Europe, and Asia. Prior to this, she was a director of Alexander Forbes. Hazel established Axiomatic Consultants in 2003 to provide independent consulting services. Please welcome to the stage, Hazel Hopkins.
But don't hold any of that against her, please. She's made better choices since then.
I'm a very tired consultant there.
There we go.
Thanks very
Your
much.
20 minutes.
Thank
Start
you very
now.
much. Great. It's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Okie dokie. So I'm talking about the independent consultant realm. And to start off with, I'm supposed to do this right click. Is it working? What am I doing wrong? I've got it right. So the first thing is, of course, when people hear about the word consultants, they often have the fear of all hell put in them, because is this another wooden horse full of consultants coming to take us over? I hope to be able to leave you with a message to say that it shouldn't be like that, and that there is value to be had by using independent consultants. I think just understanding who the role players are in a retirement fund, and I will start differentiating between freestanding and umbrella funds as we go through, but initially we have the administrator, who will manage the administration records of the fund. We have the actuary, particularly in a DB fund, but even in a DC fund, you still need your assets and liabilities to be matched on a regular basis. You have your benefit consultant. Your benefit consultant should be there providing you best-of-breed advice, market trends in benefit design, impact of changes, the retirement reform that we've heard so much about this morning. Your benefit consultant should be keeping you up to date with what these changes actually mean and the impact it'll have on your own funds that you already have. Then you have the investment consultant. The investment consultant should be advising you on the appropriate investment strategies given the liabilities of the fund. Your investment managers, which are the guys actually investing these assets for you. Could be one manager, it could be a multi-manager, or it could be a myriad of managers. And often you find that all of the above are provided by one house. Coming back to, I think, Jonathan mentioned the one-stop shop type concept, and are you then really getting the best of breed advice? You will then also have insurers, and they typically underwrite your risk benefits, your life cover, your disability cover, your FG cover, etc. Your auditors, who've got to do your annual review. Whether you're a freestanding fund, you'll appoint your own auditors. If you're in an umbrella fund, obviously the umbrella fund appoints the auditors to audit the entire fund. But ultimately, who makes the decisions in all these appointments? It's one mortal body called the Board of Trustees. And we'll talk about umbrella funds separately. So the board is fully responsible to make sure that they appoint the administrator, the actuary, the benefit consultant, etc., etc., etc. And they're accountable to ensure that they use adroit administrators who can actually perform the work that they've been appointed to do in the first place. They must also make sure that they've conducted a proper due diligence. And I think the kind of questions that was asked earlier was, well, how do you know the administrator is doing the best job that he possibly can be doing and that we're ticking the right boxes? From a management committee point of view, and I talk management committee, obviously you don't have to have a management committee if you're running an umbrella fund, but then it would be the sponsor who would be applying his mind. Ultimately, that sponsor or management committee is appointing a particular umbrella fund, and to have appointed that fund in the first place to be able to receive his employees' money, he should have done a proper due diligence on that fund and made sure that this is the best place from a cost and benefit point of view. Again, all the points that Jonathan covered in terms of what the key due diligence points are. However, you also need to ensure that once you've appointed these people to manage your members' money, that you continually review their performance. So you've got to have that ongoing annual review. Once you've chosen an umbrella fund, there is nothing to say you have to remain in that fund forever and a day. You have to continually assess and evaluate that that fund is delivering what you intended for it to deliver in the most cost-effective way in the first place. So always ensure that governance and principles are being adhered to at all times. In terms of whether you're running a board of trustees or whether you're operating through a management committee or the sponsor's making the decision, somebody ideally should be helping you through that process. And that's pretty much where the consultant comes in. Now, you can have a consultant who's provided by the provider of the service, or you can have an independent consultant. I think the most important point, though, is that consulting advice should be unbiased. It's very difficult for me to understand how you can be completely unbiased if you're employed by the provider of all services anyhow. Okay? It's hard to criticize your employer. In my long career, similar to some of the other careers, so I'm not older than other people, I do see a lot of grey in the room. I've been on both sides of the equation, and when those errors are picked up and it's all in and once, you always move to fix the problems quickly. When it's from a completely arm's length point of view, you actually have the debate, and that's what's missing, I think, in a lot of our boards of trustees. So the independent consultant adds that level of debate and that good, strong criticism between parties who are all role players in the fund. I think this point's been touched on by some of the other speakers, but I think if we consider some of the failures that we've had in our industry, and again, I think the last probably 7-8 years have really shown significant failures. This extract was actually taken from an interview between the FSB and the interview at the time on Summer TV. And a lot of it was a failure of a very large benefit administrator, where admin records were just completely incomplete, etc. And the question was asked is, well, what is the role of the FSB when we have these failures? How does the FSB ensure that administrators do comply with their requirements in terms of being licensed 13B administrators, etc.? And the response was very clear, and I think it's what we've got to constantly reinforce. The buck stops with you as the trustee. That board of trustees makes these appointments, and you have to constantly apply your mind and ensure that the people you've appointed are actually able to do the work that you've appointed them to and for what they're getting paid to do. And that's quite a significant realization. This is obviously one of the trends that's pushing towards umbrella funds as well, because for a lot of smaller boards of trustees, they simply don't have the acumen and the skill to be able to do these kind of reviews. They don't have the time, they don't have the commitment, etc., etc. So rather than delegate it to a professional board of trustees at an umbrella level. But I don't think we have seen the end of these kind of failures. I think we will still have these kind of problems going forward, and therefore the onus on us is going to be to ensure that we try and mitigate them much earlier in the process to what we might have done in the past. If we have a look at the point as well, and I think the issue of complexity. So when I was just listening to all the other speakers, I was saying, okay, let's tick that slide off, let's tick that slide off. But there is a very common theme that goes through everything here. We talk about complexity of retirement funds. We say, the average lay person, if you happen to be the head of operations or the head of the call center that's been appointed as a trustee to your sponsor's fund, you now have to apply a whole bunch of different skills to be able to assess whether all these different appointments you've made is looking after the ultimate interest of your members' money. Every rand that comes off their salary is being invested, and is that being done as prudently as possible, as the responsibility that you carry has to ensure. I think that the two factors that is currently adding to the level of complexity as well is that we are going through some significant changes. What we're going through now in the pension fund arena through the retirement reform that's being introduced through Treasury is the most significant changes we've ever seen in our industry. And you as boards of trustees and management committees need to understand these changes, need to understand all these voluminous papers that have been produced by the Treasury, and understanding what the impact is going to be ultimately to the future of your fund and the future of your members' retirement funds. Secondly, Regulation 28, which was recently repromulgated, introduced a whole different variety of investment vehicles available to boards of trustees to use when investing their members' money. Things like hedge funds, and we heard John Bogle talking about his skepticism towards hedge funds, but hedge funds today is something that is used in a lot of specialist type mandates in South African funds. The question is do you, if you're sitting as a board of trustees, do you really understand how that hedge fund operates? That is just some of the myriad complexities we're dealing with. If you're working for an engineering company and you're there to make widgets, I really, really have tremendous sympathy for you to understand and unpack all the detail that actually goes into understanding these complexities. Asset management complexity is another area which again has been covered in this morning's presentations already, but I don't think it can be underestimated. Understanding how asset managers get paid, understanding what we're paying for when we're talking about performance-based fees, it is not transparent. When you ask for the numbers, you analyze the numbers, you have more questions, you've got to drag information out, and certainly I'm in the learnership hierarchy from where we had David from a PhD all the way down to our lawyer colleagues, etc. I'm way down in that education level, and it is damn hard for me, even though I'm an industry specialist, to understand how these asset managers are actually taking out their monies out of our fund. So all in all, the level of complexity is significant and should not be underestimated going forward. I think conflicts of interest is another important issue. This is a direct extract that came out of the recent cost paper that David alluded to this morning as well, is that because our retirement system is a voluntary system, intermediaries are playing a crucial role to come and present solutions to you. And they'll often present that integrated solution to you. But within that integrated solution is that inherent conflict of between the best administrator, the best asset manager, the best consulting advice, because the consultant often comes to you with a large corporate house view. How can that corporate house view be appropriate for the engineering business, for the legal practice, for the large oil exploration company, etc., etc.? So, just from them managing their own levels of compliance, they are trying to formulate house views, and you do then have to say, are you getting the best possible advice that you possibly can, and is it being made as simple as possible for you? Let's just repeat this, sorry. The asset management industry, again, straight out of the paper, is battling with the products and too many layers of costs and too complicated. I don't know how many of you are using straightforward balanced type portfolios. The argument of, do you use balanced, do you use specialist, do you use active, do you use passive? Do you use segregated mandates with different, or do you use on balance sheet? Which ones are you actually going to go with? And somehow or another, you guys are all expected to be experts in all these areas. Here comes the role of the independent consultant, because the role of the independent consultant is there to take all these myths, this information, understand what your need is for your employees, and come up with the most appropriate solution. Simplify the choices, present them in an easily understood, plain English way, no big words, no misnomers, understand what are the costs. Provide guidance in terms of what the best practice is given future legislation, and actually coordinate the activities of these various role players. You don't replace the role players are all needed. But ultimately, you have to provide the fund with a clear path going forward. In terms of alternatives that exist, if you're a large freestanding fund, typically you could have an independent consultant, you could have independent trustees sitting on your board, you could have an independent principal officer, but these are all layers of costs that have to be accounted for. Large umbrella funds, as we've heard earlier as well, are making use of independent trustees and would typically also have independent principal officers as well. Smaller freestanding funds, however, simply can't afford these costs. They can't afford to employ an independent principal officer and an independent trustee. It just wouldn't make cost efficiency worthwhile for them. So as long as we do have these smaller funds or participants in a one-stop shop type umbrella fund whereby all the advice is coming from one sort, at least then seek out on a regular basis, and that could be maybe once a year, once every 2 years, depending on the size of the fund, a overview from an objective point of view to say, is this still the best place for us, and is there something that we are missing that we're not picking up in terms of the governance of our fund. In terms of definition of independent, I've extracted it straight from the dictionary, but just to remind us what it actually means, not subject to the control of others. So immediately that questions consultants sitting in the large one-stop type houses who provide all benefits as it is, not affiliated with a larger controlling unit, and certainly not controlled by any of the other role players that we've already identified. Not requiring or relying on something, especially not commissions. I personally am an advocate of no commission should be paid to consultants. I don't believe that if you're giving independent advice, that you should be receiving annuity income. For me, the best way of describing a consultant is you're only as good as the last piece of paper that you put in front of a client that he or she was prepared to pay for. I shouldn't do work that I'm going to receive remuneration on an ongoing basis. Personal, very controversial, but that's personal view. Not looking to others for your own opinions or for guidance, so being able to stand completely on your own 2 feet and absolutely avoiding all conflicts of interest. So you give the best advice for that circumstances. It could be completely different advice. For argument's sake, I'm of the view that you can't always say passive is better than active. There is a place for both. The most important thing is, do we understand what the implications are under all circumstances, and are we making those informed decisions? I certainly don't think that many of the consultants out there are even bringing the passive debate to the table, and I do think that they should be doing that, but it doesn't serve their interest to do it, and therefore it's still very low-key in South Africa. That's my story.
Coming from an industry where I'm supposed to believe in objectivity, I don't believe in it for a moment. In the same way as I don't believe in objectivity, I don't believe in the concept of true independence. Is true independence a pipe dream? King says you've got to be independent of mind in King 3, and how the hell do you prove that? How do we know that our consultants truly are independent?
I think that I agree with you. It's very difficult, and it is more so difficult when you are a part of a larger organization. You're an employee, you have to follow instruction, etc., etc. But I do think that there is going to be a greater focus in terms of understanding if you are getting that kind of objective thinking coming to the fore. If people are always just going to give you what the right answer is, what you want to hear, then you must also be able to say as a trustee or as a management committee member, am I being challenged? Are new ideas being put forward to me, even though the person might not advocate it? Are we at least applying our minds to different aspects? Once we know what they are, we debate, and then we agree what the right thing is for each of those boards are. There will never be, I don't know how many funds are represented in this room, there will never be the right answer for 2 different companies exactly the same.
An interesting question. If a board of trustees compares to a board of directors, why do boards of companies not have independent consultants? Why is it that trustees require independent consultants and boards of directors seem to be all-seeing and all-knowing?
Yeah. I think that probably time will change that as well. Once we have things like levels of standards of principal officers, levels of standards of company, of boards of trustees, that may change considerably. But right now, if you're sitting as a trustee on a fund, you, as I've an example gave before, you might be a manager of a call center. You could be a shop steward. You could be anything. You don't know what all this legislation actually requires. Who is going to help you navigate it? You may listen to one, but is that one completely independent? It's just another voice to add to the debate.
Any questions from the floor before we let Hazel go? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? I scribbled some notes I'm trying to make sense of as we speak. The question of getting to the best possible outcome then, does the consultant muddy the waters when it comes to the process? Because if you do have people who are the shop stewards, the call center operators who are acting as trustees, suddenly the consultant, objective or not, comes in to the debate.
Complicated.
Are boards of trustees necessarily equipped to manage the debate?
Probably not. Probably not.
So how do we get through that?
Because I think the reason for that is often that a board of trustees will be given one scenario and one explanation of why they must go in one particular route. An independent trustee comes in and says, but hold on, have you considered the other side? Okay, now you've left Joe Bloggs sitting there, he's saying, I'm confused. I thought we had a plan there. I thought those were the reasons there. Who do I believe and who do I trust? Given where his own level of expertise actually sits. So yes, absolutely. But does it mean we don't do it? No, I think you still challenge the status quo.
Oh, absolutely. Question in the front, please.
Thank you. Hazel, is there appears to be some implied fiduciary responsibility on management committees. Can you just talk about that? Because often management committees are making quite big decisions about consultants, about where money should go, and the trustees are far removed from it. So,
my view is, certainly the way umbrella funds are structured, the fiduciary responsibility should sit with the Board of Trustees. But when the Board of Trustees is allowing those management committees or sponsor to decide on their own investment strategies, etc., then I believe that fiduciary responsibility sits there as well. I don't think we've had a test case yet. I think, Jonathan, we have had a test case? Yeah, okay, sorry. I don't think it's been tested in law yet, but I believe firmly that a management committee should behave because they are appointing that umbrella fund as a recipient and investor of their money, of their members' money, employees' money.
Stephen?
Hi. Do you think that a fund which has an independent trustee with a background in EB necessarily has to have a consultant as well?
No, I don't think so necessarily. So in the one slide I actually said, Joe, there are a number of options. The issue, of course, is whether if you're a large fund, typically large funds these days are going towards independent trustees, it's about having that healthy debate and having that informed debate. But larger funds, I think, can do with just an independent trustee.
Hazel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You are free to go.